Today, we are diving into one of the most chaotic, inspiring, and terrifying events in all of history, the French Revolution. It's a story that gave us the very idea of human rights, but it also unleashed a wave of unbelievable violence. So, how did a fight for liberty end up in a reign of terror? Let's get into it.
Okay, I want you to picture it. It's Paris. It's a hot, sticky summer morning, and the mood in the city is electric. But it's not excitement, it's fear, it's anger. You can just feel it in the air. Something is about to snap.
So what's happening? Well, the king has moved his army into the capital, and rumors are flying, just spreading like wildfire, that he's about to order them to fire on the people. So, in response, thousands of regular folks, we're talking shopkeepers, workers, you name it, they create their own militia. But they need weapons, and they know exactly where to find them. Inside the Bastille, this huge, grim, medieval fortress that's just looming over the city, a perfect symbol of the king's power. Now, the storming of the Bastille, that was the moment the fuse was lit. But the powder keg had been filling up for decades. So, we really have to ask ourselves, what could possibly push an entire society to this breaking point? To answer that, we have to go back and understand the world they were trying to tear down. We need to look at what life was actually like in 18th century France. Historians have a name for it, the old regime. And really, it's pretty simple. It was a society where your entire life, what you could do, who you could be, how much you were worth, was all decided for you the second you were born. It had nothing to do with how smart you were or how hard you worked. It was all about your family name. French society was officially split into 3 groups or estates. And just look at these numbers. The imbalance is absolutely staggering. You have the first estate, the clergy, and the second estate, the nobility. Together, they made up maybe 3% of the population. Everyone else, and I mean everyone, from the poorest farmer to the richest merchant, was crammed into the third estate, 97% of the country. And if you want to know what the single biggest problem was, this chart says it all. Who do you think paid for everything? The army, the government, the king's incredibly lavish lifestyle? You'd think it would be the wealthiest 3%, right? Nope, they paid almost nothing. The entire tax burden fell on the 97%. The people with the least money were footing the entire bill. This was a popular image going around at the time, and it just sums up the feeling perfectly. People didn't see the nobility as leaders. They saw them as parasites, a spider catching the peasant in its web, just living off their hard work without giving anything back. And it wasn't just about the money. It was this deep, simmering frustration over total lack of opportunity. This is a quote from George Danton. He was a smart, educated lawyer from the Third Estate who would go on to become a leader of the revolution. And he's basically saying, hey, this system gave me a great education, but it gave me nowhere to go with it. Just because he wasn't born a noble, all doors were closed to him. That kind of frustration is a ticking time bomb. So, okay, you have this society that's just at a boiling point. How did all of that frustration finally explode into an actual organized revolution? Things moved so incredibly fast in 1789, it's kind of breathtaking. It starts when the king tries to push through new taxes. The Third Estate says, no way. On June 20th, they go to a nearby tennis court and swear an oath, declaring themselves the new government, the National Assembly. Less than a month later, boom, the Bastille falls. And then, by August, in one single night, they vote to abolish the entire feudal system. Hundreds of years of tradition just wiped away. This was their masterpiece, the revolution's mission statement. It was such a radical document for its time. It declared that rights aren't a gift from a king, they're universal. That power comes from the people, the nation, not from a monarch. They were literally writing down the blueprints for a whole new world. But here's where we hit the first major speed bump. For all that beautiful talk about universal rights, when they wrote their first constitution in 1791, they immediately created a new set of divisions. They created active citizens and passive citizens. Basically, if you were a man and you owned enough property to pay a certain amount in taxes, you could vote. If you were poor, or if you were a woman, sorry, you were a passive citizen, no vote for you. It shows you that the promise of equality, well, it wasn't for everyone. Not yet. But this hypocrisy did not go unnoticed. People immediately started pushing back. Activists like the incredible Olympe de Gouges called them out. She took their famous declaration and rewrote it, point for point, to include women. Her argument was simple. A revolution for only half the population isn't a revolution at all. So, the revolution had won its liberty from the king, but it soon found itself surrounded by enemies, both outside its borders and within. And the way its leaders chose to deal with that threat, well, it would drag France into its darkest chapter yet.
This period is known, famously, as the Reign of Terror. A radical leader named Maximilien Robespierre and his allies basically decided that in order to save the revolution, they had to destroy its enemies. So they set up a special court, a revolutionary tribunal. And if you were accused of being an enemy of the Republic, your trial was swift, and the sentence was almost always the same: death by the new, terrifyingly efficient invention, the guillotine. So how on earth could they justify this level of state-sponsored violence? Well, let's hear it from Robespierre himself. This is a chilling quote. He argued that terror wasn't just mindless violence. It was a form of justice. He said it was swift, severe, and inflexible. In his mind, when the very survival of the new republic was at stake, there was no room for mercy. It was a terrifying combination of noble ideals and absolute brutality.
And the terror wasn't just about executions. It was about achieving total control over society. They set price controls on food. They rationed bread and meat. They even made everyone eat the same type of loaf, called equality bread. You couldn't say monsieur or madame anymore. You had to address everyone as citizen. They were trying to engineer a perfect, virtuous republic from the top down, and they were willing to use force to erase every last trace of the old world. The terror couldn't sustain itself. Eventually, it turned on its own leaders, and Robespierre himself was sent to the guillotine. So after all that turmoil, what was left? What did the revolution actually leave behind?
Well, the end of the terror created a huge power vacuum. France was chaotic, and people were exhausted. And into that chaos stepped a young, brilliant, and unbelievably ambitious general, Napoleon Bonaparte. He basically ended the revolution by taking over, and eventually, he even crowned himself emperor. It's one of history's great ironies. The revolution that killed a king ended with an emperor. But he also carried many of its ideas, like legal equality, across Europe with his armies.
So, what's the most important legacy? What really lasts? It's huge. The revolution smashed the feudal system in France for good, and its shockwaves helped topple it all across Europe. But even bigger than that, it gave the entire world a new political language. Ideas about liberty, democracy, and the rights of the people, these became the revolution's most powerful exports. They would go on to inspire movements for freedom and independence all over the globe for the next 200 years. And that really brings us to the core puzzle of the French Revolution. On the one hand, it gave us these incredible ideals of liberty and equality that we still cherish today. But on the other, it's a terrifying cautionary tale about how easily a noble fight for freedom can twist into tyranny and violence. And it leaves us with a question that we are still wrestling with today. How do you defend liberty without destroying the very thing you're fighting for?